Courtney, how are you?
Good. Thank you so much for the invitation.
My pleasure. It's great to have you here. I'm honored today to have Courtney McColgan. She's the CEO and co-founder of Runa, a software company that is automating payroll for Latin America. She's a serial entrepreneur. She has a lot of experience before Runa. She was also the CMO for Cabify, a taxi application that pretty much everybody knows in Latin America, similar to Uber or Lyft in the US. I'm not gonna steal the thunder from her. She has a lot to share about her journey, about Runa. So without further ado, Courtney, can you just share with us a little bit about your background and journey up until Runa?
Sure. The quick story on me is I'm from California originally, not from Latin America. I made the move down to Latin America in 2014. But before my journey with Latin America started, I was basically always in technology. I think growing up in California, if you want to build a big business, you think the fastest way to get there is through tech. So
Right.
that's how I came around to tech. Went to Berkeley for undergrad and Stanford for business school. And in between those two, started two companies and worked in investing in startups at a venture capital fund in Silicon Valley. And I met my husband in business school. He's Peruvian. And so I made the move down south to Peru, learned Spanish at the age of 30, and then started working at Cabify. And I worked as CMO in Cabify. And when I entered, we had 30 employees, Series A, $20 million valuation. And when I left, we had 2,000 employees, a $1.5 billion valuation, and we had opened up 130 cities across 12 countries. So it was quite a ride. I very much enjoyed it. And it was through that I encountered the problem of paying employees, not just in Peru, but in multiple countries in Latin America, and just how hard and manual it was. And, there's a lot of beautiful modern payroll softwares that have been developed in Silicon Valley, but not one of them works for Latin America. So we decided to use that template, but build one that was specifically focused on automating payroll for Latin America.
That's great. Thanks for that quick intro. And as I would segue for my next question, which is, when you found that pain point, how do you went about try to find customers to
Yeah,
begin with
yeah, I
for your
think
service?
um, so. Once I sort of stumbled upon this, you investigate, right? You start saying, like, there has to be a better way. How do people run payroll today? Let me talk to people. Let me look at the systems. And I was just blown away by how antiquated the systems were. They were, they looked like the first version of Microsoft Office I remember using, or Microsoft Outlook, just multiple tabs, like
Uh-huh.
really, the blue bars and the gray boxes that we remember from the early versions of Windows. I was sort
Right.
of like, how can people be using this to run their payroll? And then ordering their food through an app on their phone, it just was such a disconnect for me.
Right.
And so then I went up to the States as well and started saying, why are you guys, these pretty softwares that I've seen in the Valley, why are you not down there? And that's when I started to learn that payroll is very local, and the labor laws that are in every country, the way that you pay people, the institutions you report what you pay on payroll to are different per country, and you really have to build for every single country. And that's why they weren't here, is that no one's built it yet in a modern way. And so from there, I was convinced that this was going to be, where I was going to spend the next chunk of my years.
Okay.
And we started building, I should say designing. We did not build. This is a key learning. Do not build, design. I
Noted.
think that you can create a beautiful experience of your software before you ever build the back end of it. So we wireframed out what it would look like, stuck all those wireframes into InVision, and tried to go sell it to customers in a video and say, hey, have your first sales meeting, and instead of a demo, just show them a video and say, do you want this? Yes or no. And we learned a lot in that. About 50 to 60 interviews that we did in Mexico trying to sell that software. And then we were convinced that this was something, and we went and started building it.
That's great. That's awesome. So what's next? What's the next big milestone for Runa as you think of 2021 and beyond?
Yeah, well, I think every company I'm sure has the milestone of just like making it through the end of this pandemic.
Indeed.
I think tested companies in different ways, whether it's been good or bad for business. There's a whole other component of it, which has been the complete shift to remote work and how that's had different impacts on your team and just team health and things like that. So that's our first milestone, is to make it through the pandemic in one piece. And then I think beyond that, we're doing some interesting stuff in Runa. We are launching our first financial services product, which is something that we've talked a lot about since the day one at Runa, but you need the infrastructure before you can start layering things onto it. So we've been really holding off. But we're going to be launching a salary on demand product, which is really cool to allow employees, instead of getting paid every 15 days, to get paid whenever they want. They just, through the click of a button through their employee profile at Runa, they can get paid for the days that they've worked. The other thing we're doing is we're opening up new geographies. Brazil has been on our roadmap for a while.
Okay.
We've been working on a Brazil solution since last year, beginning of last year. So it's been some time coming, but as they say, payroll is not that easy to copy paste from one geography to the other, but I think we'll be able to finally get out a pilot by the end of the year.
Got it. And, when working on this, do you prefer to keep everything to yourself first and then show it around when it's ready, or a prototype, if you will, or you like to bounce back ideas with mentors?
Yeah.
Mentors?
No, we definitely, everything we built at Runa, we built with customer feedback, right? So particularly, we're launching a version 2 of our payroll product. I mean, users won't really know the difference, but we basically have built a much more flexible payroll product, and we built it, off of users giving us feedback about some of the inflexibilities they had with the last product, or some of the things that took a long time or were kind of laborious processes, and how we could streamline those. And so it allowed us to re-architecture the back end and just build a much more streamlined experience. So that's launching this quarter, actually, the end of this quarter, and it's been about 9 months in the making. So we're pretty excited about that. But definitely 100% user feedback and iterations, right? We're even beta testing it right now with a couple of our users before we launch it to the rest of our users as well. And then I would say even after we launch something, there's feedback cycles that we do with specifically some of our closer customers to really get, inside scoop on what we're doing. And it's actually the way that we do everything in Runa. Now that I think about it, like we're doing a lot of improvements constantly on existing modules of our software, and we go directly to customers and ask them, show them wireframes, even put the wireframes into a format where they can click through to see where they click. So all of that is very important to us. And I think also just doing some education before you go in as well. I think we're not the first people to design payroll software. So we do look at other payroll softwares around the world and decisions they've made as to like, why do they have pop-ups versus, side boxes that fly in, and, how do they do a menu and why? And so we do a lot of research as well on, trends in the market and making decisions as to like what we like and what we don't like.
Got it. Switching gears now to your productivity style. Can you share with us your most valuable productivity hack?
Oh, let me think. So I think, I don't know if it's necessary. Yeah, I guess it's a productivity hack. I think on the personal level and then on the company level. So on the personal level, I keep everything in Trello. I have a Trello for every person who reports to me, and, a color-coded system as to what we review, what's going to be something that we're not going to be able to do this quarter and we attack next quarter. And then if we're attacking it this quarter, sort of what stage it's in. I think that's super helpful. Just staying on top of like what you actually talk about and what are the next steps of those things. I also reserve time on my calendar to do certain tasks. Otherwise, your calendar is just going to get filled up with meetings. So whether that's a project I've taken on and I need to set up, time to do that, or even calls like this, I try and set up certain windows on my calendar to do things like this so that they don't take away from other things I have on my calendar. And if you set it up that way, then you don't end up kind of overly exhausted. I also just think as a startup founder in a growing company, like you're just not going to sleep that much. Right. So less sleep, I can do more things. That is something that's happened in my life. On the company level, I think we do a great job with OKRs and really being very vigilant about what are our OKRs, not having more than 3 to 4 OKRs per company and per area, and then supporting factors for those OKRs being KPIs that are measurable. I think it's very important. And if you do those well, you do have a lot of clarity of vision around what we're working towards across the company. The other thing we've looked at recently as well and are working on, I wouldn't say we've mastered yet at Runa, but we know that mastering it is the key to success, has been successful project management. So by the time you get to like a Series A company, basically if you've raised a Series A, it's there's a belief that your company is a business. It's not just an idea on paper. It's actually something that has legs and can scale to be a business. Whether it actually scales or not is on you, but it has the potential for scaling. And so after that moment, everything becomes around optimizing processes. And optimizing processes across all areas, across technology, across operations, across people, across sales and marketing. And so if you're going to optimize a process, first you got to write it down. And then you have to work with all the people who are components of that process. But if there's no owner, there's never going to be someone managing kind of what is the deadline, what is the objective, how do we get there, and how do we make sure we pass the finish line, and then how do we measure success if we were successful or not. So we've been super focused on this concept of ownership and successful project management, because anything you need to do in Runa requires other people. And in order for us to get from one place to another, we're going to have an owner of anything we want to do at Runa. So we actually have a workshop this quarter on project management and successful project management and what that looks like, because it is actually a skill set. Not everyone knows it. It is something that needs to be taught.
Well, definitely, I agree with that. I'm an engineer by background, so I can totally get how important that can be to get stuff done, especially for a startup. But being so busy, and even though you cannot time yourself carefully so that you have time to do other projects or key individual tasks, if you will, how do you, given the pandemic, how do you maintain yourself motivated, you know?
I think, I mean, I look at it, I think a lot of this is, I look at it like being able to start a business is a privilege, right? I do think there's a lot of reasons, right? I think socioeconomically, you have to have some sort of liberty to be able to do that, to be able to take those risks. I also think it's a profile. Like not everyone can just go leave a stable job and go start a business. I think it's nerve-wracking for some people, and for others it's less nerve-wracking. I won't say it's a walk in the park, but it's definitely something that's like I feel very comfortable in. So I feel very privileged to be doing what I'm doing. And I think in that allows you to sort of see the silver lining between every day. I mean, I really do get motivated by what we're doing from the altruistic standpoint that I do think we're making the world a better place. Like we serve PMAs, like 89% of our customers are businesses below 50 employees. And that is like, you know, the majority of every market in Latin America. And we're helping them run payroll better and run faster, which means they probably have a better likelihood of surviving. And I think that's really empowering. I also get very, very motivated by the people that we're working with. I mean, these are not people who have 25 years in Silicon Valley and previously worked at Facebook and Google. These are people who maybe have worked at a tech company once or twice in their life. And this will be the first unicorn they've ever been a part of, most of them. And that's awesome. Like the fact that most of these Brunitos who are part of our team are going to get to experience the growth that I experienced at Cabify from Series A to Series D to $1 billion company is just an amazing experience. And you only do it, you know, most people do it once in a lifetime. You know, at Runa, my goal is to have done it twice, once with Cabify and now with Runa. But I don't know, like who gets to do those things in a lifetime? It's just like incredibly empowering. And so for me, that's a huge motivation.
Oh, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And I also know that you founded 2 companies in your 20s as well. So looking back in time, what's been your biggest setback as an entrepreneur, if any, and how do you overcome that?
Yeah, I think it's interesting to look back on your first companies versus where you are today, and just how you were as an entrepreneur, as a manager, as a coworker, for me 10 years ago versus how I am today. I've definitely grown a lot, which is good. I think we all would hope that we're better today than we were yesterday. I think there's a part of this is I really understand why investors invest in serial entrepreneurs, because you do get better every time you do this. I won't necessarily say it's pattern recognition so much as it is just like learning kind of what controlled chaos looks like, because there is a certain level of controlled chaos in startups, no matter what size you are. If you're growing really fast, you're going to have some sort of chaos, but there is a way to optimize and improve that I think runs across all startups, regardless of what industry you're on and what problem you're solving. So for me, I think, self-awareness is something that's grown a lot with me. And I've taken a lot of feedback, I think, and I've told my team this too, like, especially also since becoming a manager, at a higher level, as I got to experience with Cabify, where I managed, 350 people in different countries and different titles. Becoming a mom, I have 3 kids, becoming a wife, all of these things force you to compromise, understand where someone else is coming from, and meet at a middle ground, versus when you're 22 and you just get out of school and you're like, it's my way or the highway, because I don't really know any other way.
Right.
So I think I've become a lot more sensible and easier to work with, and empathetic. I think just empathetic as someone to work with. I've also become smarter, right? There's ways to hack things, get there faster, and you just learn that with every company you build. I think you also know where to cut corners and where you can't. And I think that we've benefited from those learnings at Runa for sure. And then I think the other part of this is just a certain aspect of luck, right? Like, I think the reason people are serial entrepreneurs is that every time they go to launch their idea, I think they really do think that that's going to be the big one, right? Like, I don't think you start a company thinking it's going to be small, right? You're like, oh, I want to build a small little company. Some people do, and that's great. But I think that a lot of the people who are in the Silicon Valley backed startups start every company because they want to become the next Uber, the next Instacart, the next Amazon and eBay. And so something goes wrong in the process, and part of it can be management, but a lot of it has to do like right product, right market, right time, and that you can't really map. It's like sometimes you don't really know until you get it out there. And so I think that's something that I won't say I've gotten better at, because it's part of it's an X variable, but I've definitely gotten a lot better at kind of pinpointing opportunities and why it's the right time for that, and testing it out as much as I can before I fully decide to invest in something, as we did with Runa.
Gotcha. And talking about Runa, going back to Runa in particular, I know the pandemic changed things in terms of working from home or working remotely, but how is the working style in Runa? How do you guys operate?
Yeah. So, I mean, the good thing about Runa is that we don't have any physical product, right? We are a software company, software as a service. So everything we build, is our product online. So that makes it really easy to go to remote. I mean, before the pandemic, we were, I won't say a remote company because we weren't. We did have a percentage, about 10% of our team that was remote. We were a flexible team. We always had flexible work hours, flexible work locations. So there was an element to sort of like people not always being there and using Zoom for calls and documenting of processes and whatnot. However, remote work really thrust us into that. And I'd say we do a lot more documentation now. We're a lot more attentive to when meetings start, communicating if we're not going to be there in the first 5 minutes, things that all of us have sort of learned in moving to remote work. We also have these cool backgrounds now for our Zoom, so we're giving a lot more love to our online presence and communication tools. But I think Runa will definitely go back to an in-office setting. I know it's like hard to talk about that because we're in such a weird world right now, but I do see a need for like in-office, chats by the water coolers, talking to a room of people in person. We'll always have a percentage of the team that is remote for sure. I don't know what exactly that breakdown is. And I do think there is something to remote work of being able to work remotely from wherever you want for a period of time. Like that's a cool thing that you can like, hey, I'm gonna work from Costa Rica and take my family and rent a house for a month and that's gonna be my life. I think that's cool, and I think it's something that we want to continue to like embody in Runa. I just don't think we figured out exactly what that policy looks like and how we're going to introduce it. We need a little bit more insight on, how the long run of this thing works out.
No, I agree. And, Server we actually started virtual because Arturo, my co-founder, is in Lima and I'm here in Miami. So it's working fine. And I think you can pretty much work from anywhere depending on what you are solving for in your solution. I agree.
Yep.
How do you come up with the name Runa?
Runa is I feel like my favorite thing about Runa is our name. It was like the first name I thought of. It's amazing. That never happens. But I was in Lima thinking about what do we want to call this, and I was like, I don't want to be like people manager or like software, they always have those words in them,
Right.
HR software guru or something like that, I didn't want to have any name that was specifically tied to what we do, but I did want it to have a link to what we do without it being obvious. And so I wanted a name that could stand on its own. And I immediately thought of Quechua because Quechua in Peru is the Andean dialect. And there's just a lot of words that are words you've never heard of, but they mean things once you look them up. And there are things that probably haven't been occupied by many people in the world because not many people know about the Quechua dialect. So, and it was our little nod as well to Peru where we started coding Runa. And we had always been coding Runa for Mexico since day one, but we started in Peru mainly because I was based here and I was 6 months pregnant at the time when we started building Runa. And so it wasn't like we could pick up and move to Mexico tomorrow. So Runa means people in Quechua. And that's what we're all about. Like, I think this whole journey for us is about the people, from the small, goal of just being able to pay people in the companies on time and what they're due with the right government filings being actually done, and the right deductions being taken out. I think that's a very small step. But beyond that, we really want to just eliminate all the paperwork around payroll so that HR teams don't have to spend so much time in it. And they're focused on things like strategy and culture. That's really where the art and the creativity come in for an HR director. So for us, it's all about the people, and the end people we aim to serve are the employees at our companies.
That's great. That's great to hear. Thanks for that. On the personal note, is there any favorite book or movie or band that you like a lot that you would like to share with you?
My favorite things. Well, I do think that there's a great book by Ben Horowitz, the Hard Things About Hard Things. I think it's a great, just like lay it on the table, things you should know in starting a company. I enjoyed it very much. There's also a book that's called The High Growth Handbook. The High Growth Handbook was actually written by one of our investors. His name's Elad Gil. He has been a seed investor in most of the companies that matter in the Valley: Stripe, Airbnb, Facebook, a number of very, Gusto is one of them as well, a number of very large companies. So he also started a company in the 2000s that was acquired by Twitter and grew Twitter. It was like employee number 40 and grew it to the thousands. So he knows his way around the Valley and he knows his way around companies. But what I particularly like about his book is that it's really like a handbook. So you don't read it from beginning to end because always, it's hard for founders to find time. You read like a snippet of a chapter when you cross that problem. So like for me, it's like, hey, how do I deal with, I just read a chapter, it's called Leveling. So titles and companies. And as you think about growing, how do you deal with like what titles you give people and setting standards? And just really great information on like what Facebook and Google and Microsoft did in the early days, and now what companies more recently are doing, with lots of quotes from people that matter and who know about this stuff in the Valley. So I find it very useful and very applicable to running a company.
Excellent. So for sharing, and definitely we'll take a look at that one. I knew Ben Horowitz's book, but I didn't know that the second one. So definitely keep an eye on that one.
Mm-hmm.
Last question. Is there any fun fact that people don't know about you?
Yes, my major in college was Chinese. I was, which has like zero application in my life right now. Um, so you could say that you spent your 4 years in college for like nothing. But I think it's funny when I look back on all of my previous companies all had a connection to China. Like I thought I was going to, build companies in China and do stuff with China. And then the world sort of had a plan for me, which was introducing me to my husband in business school, and then everything turned to Latin America, and I haven't looked back on China since. So it's sort of funny where life takes you, I guess.
All right. Well, Kern, it's been a pleasure to speak with you today. Thanks for sharing all your great learnings and hacks and
No, of course. Thank you.
Best
Thank
of
you for the
luck.
great questions.
My pleasure. Best
Thank
of
you
luck
very
with the journey this year, and hopefully the pandemic will end soon, or will
Light at the end of the tunnel. I think we're close. I think we're close.
I agree. Excellent.
All right. Thanks so
Good to
much.
have you here.
Bye.
Bye.